Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about starting, growing, and running a creative online business without relying on social media. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and today I am here to bring you a very, very, very special episode. When I started Off the Grid, I had a tiny list, a secret list of dream guests, people whose podcasts I listened to and loved, and dreamt that one day I might have them on my podcast and be able to talk to them directly, ask them any question I wanted, and do it in a way where we got to feel comfortable and expansive together, not just like stressed and urgent or panicked and nervous, or like either of us was doing some type of obligatory promotion or something like that. I dreamt of hosting people like today's guest, and I am so thrilled to tell you that this week on Off the Grid, I am joined by LINDSAY MACK of Tarot for the Wild Soul. If you are not familiar with LINDSAY, they are a celebrated and renowned tarot reader, teacher, and author who has taught and supported tens of thousands of students in the Soul Tarot School and reached millions of listeners on their podcast, Tarot for the Wild Soul. LINDSAY's show is one of the ones that I listened to when I was learning about tarot, and I return to it time and time again for their wisdom and guidance. And while LINDSAY is all over the internet talking about tarot, and we love it, they much less often get to talk about their business and really dig into not just the who, what, where, when, why of the cards, but the how of their business and how their approach to tarot has come to support them and their family over the past decade. So in this conversation, LINDSAY and I are going deep behind the scenes of Tarot for the Wild Soul and Soul Tarot. And LINDSAY shares how they built their creative business, the inflection points that led to their very successful business growth, and then also decline that you'll hear about over the past few years. They also talk about the realities of being a breadwinner without a safety net in this, proverbial waves hands economy. And then we get into why they're releasing a tarot deck and book now. Why didn't it come sooner? What makes this the moment? We dig into all of that. And LINDSAY closes us with a really beautiful meditation on the tarot archetypes that are carrying them through this very busy season of their book launch. And that piece of the conversation gave me a lot of solace and guidance for how to handle busy seasons in my own life and how to rest amidst that overwhelm. So this episode is so special to me, and I'm so grateful that you pressed play on it. Before you go to hear it, I do want to encourage you to get a copy of Tarot for the Wild Soul, LINDSAY's new book, and the Soul Tarot deck, which is a gorgeous tarot deck illustrated by Chelsea Granger that also comes with a guidebook talking about each card. So you'll hear a bit in this conversation about the difference between Tarot for the Wild Soul book and the Soul Tarot deck with its guidebook. But in my opinion, you're going to want both. So go ahead and head to the show notes for the link to order both of them while we dive in to today's episode, my conversation with LINDSAY MACK. Hi, LINDSAY. Welcome to Off the Grid.
It's so lovely to be here. Legitimately a dream come true.
I am so excited to speak with you today about your new book, your new deck, and about your business. So I know that you have been reading tarot for 30 years now, and that you have been a professional tarot reader, teacher, designer. I feel like you weave so much into your practice, but that you've been doing that work for over a decade. And I'm really excited to chart these sort of parallel courses of you going to the cards, living your life with them, and eventually building this deck with the wonderful artist Chelsea Granger, as you also built a business and made tarot your livelihood, which I know there are plenty of off-the-grid listeners who would love to be in that position, and I'm sure have delighted in seeing you succeed in this way. So I thought we would start with the book And then we'll move into talking about your business. And then at the very end, we'll talk a little bit about actual tarot cards and archetypes. And I was wondering if I could begin with a kind of open-ended question, if you'll allow it, which is, could you tell me the story of your book and the deck and how this came to be and why now?
It's funny that you ask it because it's a question I've asked quite a bit over the last several years. So I spent a great deal of the last 10 to 11 years kind of always imagining that writing a book would be something that I would do, but it never worked out. I would kind of like I'd hear from an editor who was interested but couldn't find an agent and then found an agent and it never quite gelled. Like it just never happened. And a couple times I thought, well, God damn it, I'll just do it. And I couldn't do it. I would be physically stopped sometimes. I'd try to do it and I'd burst into a flare, into a pain flare, or like it was a little bigger than me in ways that was a huge point of conflict for many years. And then I was actually about to just completely abandon this career a couple of years ago after I had my child in 2020. I had my child, had a postpartum from hell, multiple, unfortunately, subsequent surgeries, and the economy tanked, and my business became incredibly slow. It was very, very frightening. I'm our primary provider, so it was just an enormous amount of pressure within like the first year of having my child. And I just thought, like, not that this is an answer, but I was just like, I don't know if my heart is in this anymore. And I kind of feel like maybe people are done with my work. I think I took the economic factor like personally. It took a little while, I think, for a lot of like more intimate creators to start talking about how it was most of us. So I thought it was just me for a really long time. And this is a long way of saying that I was researching grad schools, and then somebody asked me if they'd ever thought I'd write a book, and I said, I would like to, but I won't do it without an agent. She introduced me to my agent, Meg Thompson, who helped me draft a proposal, and somebody at Hachette wanted it and gave me a lovely advance for that book, which was pretty unheard of, and wanted to do a deck too. And I wanted to do it with Chelsea, and they said yes, and Chelsea said yes. And like, it was dropped into my lap, I think. I believe I worked for it, but there's an element of fortune and good luck in it that I could never have worked for. So it was just like an unbelievably lucky thing. And I think I certainly wasn't planning to have it this way, but I do feel like it was some kind of miraculous act to keep me in the work because I was beyond ready to let it go. So it was really extraordinary. Not just like, oh, you're writing this book, like hold in there with this business. Like everything got a little smoother, everything evened out a little bit, but so many different things blossomed just from my having written the book. So I'm not totally sure why now, but there are elements of the timing that feel very important and fortuitous. And while it was a little later than I would have loved for it to be, I personally don't think I could have ever written this book prior to becoming a parent. I do not think I could have written this book without having gone through the experience of birth and also of going through an emergency health crisis, which happened to me after I gave birth, which led me to also become a death doula and pursuing potentially becoming a chaplain very soon as well. So it's like there were a lot of things that couldn't have happened, but I didn't know that. So that's a long-winded way of saying it wasn't really completely in my control. I would have really loved for it to have come sooner, but that's okay.
Thank you so much for weaving all of that in and sharing the journey to the book, because it really does feel like a journey. And I think that so many of us have these like tender dreams that we hold with our work, right? A book is one for so many people, publishing a book or a tarot deck or illustrating a calendar or anything it may be, whatever it is. Like so many of us have these dreams of creating sort of culminatory objects in our work. And I really appreciate your story of this journey of like it's something you wanted and you wanted it much sooner than it actually happened. And it just kept getting blocked both by external forces and by like your literal body saying, no, it's not this, it's not it, it's not with these people, it's not in this way, not now. And it was only when you went through, I mean, it sounds to me like just multiple concurrent sort of dark night of the soul moments that on the other side of that, you had everything you needed to write the book and create the deck. And I mean, on the one hand, that's really beautiful. And on the other hand, I'm like, sorry, you had to go through hell to have your tarot
Yeah.
deck.
Thank you, actually. I appreciate that.
I want to ask you a little bit then about why you decided to make the book this way, or like maybe just to clarify for listeners. So there is a book called Tarot for the Wild Soul, a trauma-informed approach for growth, healing, and grounding in the present moment.
Mhm,
Then there is a deck called Soul Tarot that
mhm,
includes a guidebook inside with descriptions of the cards. And I probably wasn't a very close reader before I was looking into this, but I thought Tarot for the Wild Soul was essentially going to be a book that was a guidebook. And when I started to go through it, I was like, oh no, this
mhm.
is something else. So could you
Yeah.
tell me and the listeners, like, what is the something else of this book that you've written and why isn't it just a guidebook?
Well, I think that it might have been had there not been the good fortune of also doing a tarot deck, which they were delighted to do, and I felt so lucky that they wanted to do Running Press. As some people may know, and probably you'll mention in the intro, I teach a kind of a tarot, a style of tarot called Soul Tarot. And there's a lot that I could say about it, but the biggest pieces and kind of anchor points to understand about it is that it aims to be a kind of a supportive framework for approaching the cards that is rooted in the willingness to consider each card as bringing helpful medicine, even if you don't like it. Like you're totally allowed not to like it. But if there's a willingness, and this will all connect, by the way, but if there's a willingness to say, like, there might be something that this card is offering me here that could be useful to me, it changes our relationship with the deck and the way that we're able to receive support from it. In my experience, it really does. Because so much of the way tarot is kind of discoursed and the way that our kind of overculture, it's like this idea that tarot is being done to me or whatever it is. That's another big framework is like the tarot's happening for you, not to you. I believe in soul tarot. It's a big pillar. Like we're encouraged, not even like permissioned, but encouraged to go to the cards messy. Because the way that you're really going to understand the cards is if you go to them with your raw stuff versus getting polished to go to them for whatever, right? So these are all just like little tiny bits. Another huge part of the pillar is that we aim to kind of orient our readings in the present moment rather than the future. But the reason that I felt really called to write a book and the reason that I think like everyone wanted me to write the book that I did is because once again, sort of the overcultural, to coin a phrase by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, like the overcultural paradigm of tarot is so built on something so profoundly different that the book, it's a humble attempt, but the invitation of the book is to rebuild the foundation and to help people to consider the cards in a not wildly different way. There are lots of treatments of the cards that are like pretty standard. They're not too variant, but there's a commitment to trying to unpack some of the stuff that has made tarot a little bit more out of reach. And so the work of the book is to undo and rewild, undo some of the harmful, tricky, difficult, uninclusive aspects of tarot, probably imperfectly on my part, and invite folks to rewild and reclaim the deck in their own image. And there's a lot of use of kind of seasons and spirals and nature to help with that. But that's the task of the book. And it can be used kind of as a guidebook, but not really. Whereas the deck, I just wanted it to be something where you didn't need the book if you didn't want it.
I really appreciate this emphasis on rewilding the tarot, something I've found in my own relationship to the cards, but also when I have worked with some other teachers or just I encounter other people who read them, is that people can often bring sort of their relationship to dogmatic religion into a dogmatic
Oh,
relationship with any spiritual tradition. And there can be a sense of like, this is the right way or the wrong way or the right meaning or the wrong meaning. And I have been studying tarot for long enough myself, which is about a decade now, to have started to see some of the common narratives that you're interrupting here. Like, I love some of the pillars of Soul Tarot that I'll just read from chapter 2 of your book. You've already referenced them, but I'd love to just name them explicitly, where you say there are no bad or good cards in the tarot. The present moment is all there is. We're not focused on future divination. We're focused on how we are right now, which leads to that beautiful pillar that we're allowed to be messy when we go to our tarot decks. And instead of having the way I think of it is like, I don't have to be my highest self to go to the tarot decks. I can go there and maybe try to commune with my higher self, but like, I don't have to be in the best possible place to arrive at the cards. And I also love your insistence that each card is an invitation and that tarot is spiralic. So it's really this like path that we walk over and over again. And I think it's a really beautiful way of centering in your very specific approach to tarot that you call soul tarot. I think what I loved about reading through your book is it felt less like I was doing a sort of like card by card study of the tarot, which I have done more than once. And I documented on a whole podcast where I made a podcast card by card as well. Like instead of that, what you get is invitations into moments in your life and cards that you might turn to and that might show up there. So, I love chapter 11, When You're in Hell. I like this emphasis on like you can go to the tarot from a particular stage in your own personal journey and find certain cards, but also that you can sort of really, I felt like this book gave me permission to rewild the tarot and kind of create my own moments. Like what would my cards be for the moments when I'm in hell? What would my cards be
yeah.
for the moments when, I'm living on spiral time or I'm deep in grief or what are the themes I would pull out and what are the cards I would turn to? It just felt like a really, as you've said, like radical rewilding of how do we mix and remix these archetypes instead of always studying them as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of always seeing it as a sort of linear journey.
Thank you for reflecting that to me. And I'm honored to know that, especially as a reader yourself, like it made that kind of an impact. That brings me so much joy. And yeah, I think like I'm a very, very passionate teacher of the tarot. And I'm actually like later today wrapping up my 12-week training. And every time I teach a big container like that, it's a massive gift because it reminds me that even though this is like a North Star, like Soltero is a North Star that helps and guides me, it really is totally flexible and also I think has been born out of reading books since I was 12 years old and really just being like, I can't find anything in this that I can. And I think one kind of delicious gift of starting at 12 is that everything that was written, especially at that time, because I'm 42, was really for people who were a lot older than me, which immediately tells you that it really can't stand for everybody if a 12-year-old can't resonate with it, right? And I think you're right about this idea of, like, I think too, important thing to acknowledge that is acknowledged in the book and in the acknowledgments that I think reading for the future is an exquisite, I mean, it's a huge part of the closed practices of Roma and Romani readers. It's a massive part of some people's like inherited, again, sort of closed practices. It's a huge part for a lot of cultures, for a lot of particular readers, some inherited, some not. Some people read more like that, some don't, and I am a celebrator of all kinds of reading. Like, I mean, I love working with my students who are like, I absolutely like my guides use the court cards to talk about my clients' family members or lover or other people. I'm like, hell yes. And for those of us who do not have that, this is one option for, I think, a pretty sturdy fallback if you're just like, yeah, I don't feel particularly like I am an intuitive very clearly, but the cards are not doing the intuiting for me. My guides are, and they use the tarot how and when I see fit. So I think it leaves a lot of space for the joy and the beauty in all kinds of practices. It's just one other way of having, again, like bones of the house.
I really love that flexibility and inclusivity and like recognition of there certainly are closed card reading practices and also tarot in and of itself, at least based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it is not the cards themselves are not a closed practice. We can approach them. We can
Yeah.
enjoy and experience them. When I say we, I mean anyone who's listening to this or feels drawn to them. You've already mentioned your work and your business a few times, so I want to kind of officially wrap it in here. I would love to hear a bit about how you went professional with tarot, I suppose. Like, I know a common path is to go from reading for oneself to offering paid readings and then maybe doing some workshops and things. Is that how your journey went? Can you talk a little bit about how you sort of made the leap from tarot being a personal practice to being your whole business?
Yes, I would love to. So I came up around I made the leap into professional practice in 2014. And I mention that because it was a whole different world in 2014. There was a lot of room to do that, a lot of room to come up, a lot of room. Like, it wasn't incredibly common to have people pursuing paths as like full-time tarot readers. I would say we were like coming into that time. I'd been there a little bit, but that wasn't really on my radar. So I went through a pretty intense, just like mental health situation. Let's just put it that way. Just like a very, very intense PTSD, like all came up and forward right around the time when I got married. And that was in June of 2014. And I was really lucky to, after I got married, just heal. Like, I was with the right people, I had the right resources, and my nervous system was starting to come back together. And I happened into a store in Brooklyn that was like I'd gone into a couple times, and I went in there to talk about doing a pop-up because I was involved in like a wellness collective at the time. And they were lovely, and they mentioned that their tarot reader had dropped out and they needed somebody to come in and read for like a summer event that they were having. And I said, I don't know what made me say it. I'm a tarot reader and I would love to do that for you. And I remember leaving the store and calling my partner and being like, I don't know why the fuck I just said this, because I also at that time, like, I'd been reading forever, but I was reading for myself and friends. So I wasn't like hard memorized. I was just sort of like going with whatever. But then that night I was like, "Well, I gotta pull on these BFA in theater arts actor skills because I'm a fast memorizer and kind of a little bit of a photographic memory, especially for like things that I hear." And I wound up getting a little memorized on every single card and went back in the next day. And I thought, well, I mean, it's $5. I took it very seriously, but I was like, I don't know. There was a lot of it that I didn't totally understand why, but it felt really right to do. And I sat down and I did many readings, and it was like every gift and skill and quality of my personality and relationship with this tool that I had been in intimate relationship with forever was coming together in this moment with these strangers in a dedicated way. And I knew in that moment, I was like, I think I have a real gift with this. Like, different from like it was also my first experience really of understanding that I and was getting something for people that I had no way of knowing how I was knowing it. And I walked out that night like on a cloud. And I remember again calling my partner and being like, I think I want to try to do this. And so I was working as a childcare provider at the time. And I just from September of 2020 or of 2014 to August of 2015, like hustled. I don't really like that word too much, but was hustled not from a burnout place, but a place of like absolute passion. Like I was like, I will read at any time, at any hour. I will meet people at cafes. I will like, so it was a combination of doing as much reading as I could at this shop, teaching a little bit, like for pennies on the dollar, basically, doing readings on Instagram, which actually like reached people during those olden times. And people really connected with what I had to say very quickly. I wouldn't say it was an absolute wave, but it was enough. And then very shortly after that, the lovely person that I was working with was like, I'm having a baby and I'm not going to go back to work. So you have like 7 months notice for your last day. And for 7 months, I was like, okay, I will get as much experience, try to cobble as much together as I can. Maybe I could try to give it a shot. Like maybe, I don't know. And there was really very little proof that it was going to work, frankly. And then my job ended and I kicked it off full time with this work and like it happened. Like it was enough. My partner at that time had a job and had a job for many years. So that was trust and believe the only way it was able to work for the first few years. But it was a lot of, I don't necessarily know that this is good advice for anyone, but it was a lot of like, I had to just cut my teeth. I had to do a lot for a lot less money than I wanted to do. I had to do a lot of stuff and learn like, wow, I never want to do that again, ever. And like, I definitely didn't go into it with a perfect plan. I did not go into it thinking like, oh, this is like how it's all going to work out. It took a really long time before I was able to make enough to actually like, be in the green. And then got incredibly successful and didn't know what to do with that either. And that was very scary and overwhelming to have a lot of money over a couple of years and to like do my best with like my paying my people. It was wild overpayment, on my part. And I was like, is it enough? Oh my God. And like being misunderstood and like not that I'm complaining about that, but very uncomfortable with like all of that happening so quickly. And also it was the greatest blessing. And then getting comfortable with being like, wow, times are way leaner than they've been for the last 3-4 years. Okay. Like, what are my values? What do I want to change? Like, what's going to allow this to continue to make sense? So it was, again, like pretty, I don't know that I, again, like could have planned it like that. It just happened that the ledge was there. I was absolutely ready to get a job at any time. I've always worked service jobs, nanny, cleaning person. So I was prepared to do that, but it wound up not happening.
I'm really hearing the way that, like, for you, your path sort of appears as you walk it. And it's
Yes,
not that you're
absolutely.
like,
Yes.
that's where I'm going to go and I'm going to track my way there.
I want it to be that way, Amelia. Do you have anybody you can talk to have my life become that way? Because I would love it.
Yes, let me petition the gods and goddesses and
Please
see. It's,
get
but
me in there for a meeting.
it's also hilarious to me personally because I recently recorded with Andy J. Pizza of Creative Pep Talk
Oh.
podcast all about creative strategy. And Andy was very much like, everything I do is mapped out. Like, I know where I want to go. I do everything in between here and there. And it's all strategic. And they like sort of laid it all out. And I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. And I cannot
Mhm.
relate maybe less.
I wanna be like that so bad, and I always try to be, and then it's the equivalent of, like, bursting into flames in my hands and then having the flames, like, turn into, like, little clowns dancing around, like, it won't be.
Yeah, I think like we each have different paths through life. Obviously, we each have different sort of like contracts and karmic debts and whatever you want to believe in that we're here to resolve. And
Mhm.
also, I think a lot about human design. And like
Okay.
for me, with my profile, like I just have to try the thing. Like you said, I personally can't know if something's for me or not until I try to do it. And then I will get some clear evidence whether it was for me or not. But that leads to a path that looks more non-traditional perhaps or stop start or just like requires more risk taking because you have to try it out.
Yeah.
And I am very strategic at this stage, but people did not see me because I was not a public person in the like decade where I was deeply fucking around and finding out. And I'm really glad that they didn't see that and that there's no longer a lot of evidence for it anywhere. So I want to ask you a few more like questions about some of the points in that journey. I'm so curious, you know I first encountered your work on Instagram,
Mhm.
and my perception, even when I first found it, was like, wow, this is like a big tarot person. Lindsay is like the person in the space. I think you already had your podcast at that point. Yeah, I think you were already in that upswing of success. So I'm curious for you, like, are there specific things when you look back that you're like, oh, these were the inflection points, like starting the podcast or
Oh,
like
yeah.
somebody shared me on Instagram and it all kind of that helped it really grow? Could you talk a little bit about what those moments were?
Yes, absolutely. So, one, Maha Rose. So, Maha Rose gave me an opportunity to be a reader with them and to teach a little with them. And wow, was that important for me. And I'm so grateful that Lisa gave me the opportunity to do that. I'm thinking too about Ruby Warrington from the Numinous. Like, I owe so much to Ruby. Like, she gave me the opportunity to write the tarot scopes, which was such a gift and a really important discipline. Like generating that every week and every month was like a sacred discipline. I think especially for me because I'm all over the place that it was super helpful and really important and a devotion and a service to be sure. And that was a big inflection point too. I think Maha Rose was certainly working with the Numinous was for a couple of years my podcast, to be sure. With all due respect, and I wanna really say, like, I'm speaking right now without complete crystal clear like, I know that there was somebody out there doing it alongside what I'm about to say, so I just wanna offer the utmost respect on whomever's name that I'm about to not speak to. But if you can believe it, it did not feel incredibly strategic to make a podcast. It felt like a tithing. So, like, the one of the reasons I'm, like, alive right now is because of Tara Brach's podcast, which saved my life 100 times over, really, uh, uh, like, helped me to awake to the idea that I even wanted to be in a helping space to begin with, and Tara Brach's podcast was always free, and I didn't come from any money, so I don't know, I think I just thought, like, well, it could be really cool to do this. It was in 2017. That was like the podcast boom for some, but I think not for most. And as far as I knew, there was Biddy Tarot's podcast and I think one other tarot podcast that was like really in front of me. I didn't listen too much to Biddy Tarot, but obviously knew Bridget in the field and in the world. And I did it, and it was incredibly popular and very successful. I think because there wasn't a whole lot of other voices in the space, frankly, like, it was just a very lucky opportunity, but I didn't do it to get more successful. I think I just did it because I wanted to serve people who couldn't afford to work with me, which has always been a cornerstone of what I do. And then my course. So I did my first course a little bit after having launched my podcast. And if you can believe it, the idea to do my first course did not come to me until basically 2 months before I did it, which is my style. But it happened to be at a time when courses were doing just really well and it continued to be a really important mainstay. So I think there have been definitely like these moments, I would say post course I can't think of too many other I would say post-course, it's been a long time, pretty much from 2017 to now that the book is coming out, I had made my table and I was really dressing my table and I was bringing other people to my table, but I didn't get invited to a lot of tables after that, which makes sense because once you get to a certain point in your career, that dynamic shifts. You're invited to a little bit less, you're hosting more. And now that's a little different, which is lovely. But yeah, so I would say those are the bigger inflection points.
It's really helpful to hear. And also, it all just tracks for me in the way that it grows. Like, first through other people relationally. I think that the longer that I have this podcast and I talk to people and, critique social media, it just really strikes me over and over again how people will try to use social media as either a shortcut to relationships or to replace them. It's like, well, I don't need those strategic partners. And not even like I call them quote unquote strategic partners. They're just people you met who like you connect with, who want to support each other's work.
Yeah.
And I think that for some people, they have been able to build businesses without that through an algorithm or through, paid ad traffic or something. But to me, that is always really precarious because any of that can go away anytime. But the relationships, if you are tending them and staying in integrity, like they will remain for decades and they can really sort of help birth a business, which I think is really beautiful. I can think of people who definitely have helped like doula this podcast into existence, not because that's what they thought they were doing, but just because they shared it enough. I was like, this would not
Uh-huh.
be as successful if, Cody Cook Parrott had not been shouting it out a lot. If the Holisticism crew hadn't shared it, it would not have gotten the legs it needed for me to actually be able to like take it forward. So I love that it started there for you. And then also that as you kept going, you built in the pillars that mattered. You built in the podcast, you built in the teaching. I definitely would agree with you. I can't think of a lot of like long-standing tarot podcasts. I think the one I used to listen to was Tarot Bites with Teresa Reed.
Oh, yeah, I need to throw respect on. That was the person that I was like, I'm missing them. Teresa's so amazing and important. Yes. Terabytes was absolutely around and was great and beloved. Still is, I think.
I think so, yeah. It's such a great show. And also it's not that there can only be one, right?
No, not at all.
And we need many, but I would agree. The space did not feel full or something. And also this is like podcasting before AI. This is such a different era. I mean,
Mhm.
even when I created my own tarot podcast, the reason I made it is because I couldn't find what I wanted, which was a tarot podcast that had episodes that were under 5 minutes on every card.
Oh,
And so I was like, oh,
sweet.
I just need to do this.
Mhm.
And, and it was like a personal practice for me. There was no money involved. It was not professional. It was my way to try to actually study through public sharing, which has been
Mhm.
something I've done throughout my career. But all of that is to say that I love that your podcast started from a place of I want to offer accessible understandings of these cards. And because podcasts saved my life, thank you, Tara Brock, I'm going to
Mhm.
do it in the form of a podcast to offer that to other people. It comes out of
Yeah.
the sense of radical generosity. And then from there builds, I often find like when people start podcasting and you actually have to say all the things out loud, that can give you the confidence to begin teaching or to
Mhm.
like realize like, oh, I do have things to say. I can put this together. Maybe this is a class now. So I'd love to hear more about like how did that first class become Soul Tarot School, which is now much bigger than any like one class or workshop.
It's come together bit by bit, strand by strand. It's woven itself into a bit of a tapestry, which sounds cheesy, but it is true. I think that every single year, I wouldn't recommend this at all, but every single year that I did Tarot for the Wild Soul, the course, it changed. So I would do it all one year and then scrap it all, and then do it all one year and then scrap it. And I think there was only one year where I did the same course twice because I felt like I was constantly relearning things and wanted to speak to them. I do a lot less redoing now, which is interesting, but I just don't have the energy, frankly, and the desire to do that. And I have a child, it just doesn't work. But I think that every time I would teach, it would force me to really think like, is there, as far as I can understand it, to be a kind of a code to this, pillars, tenets? Like, is there something here that binds all this together? And every single time, like this book has been built out of the 10 years of experience that I've spent doing these courses, doing them, then having students come back to me and be like, but what about my experience? Because this does not align for me at all. And then being like, huh, you're right. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, let me rethink that, whatever. And my own experience being like, well, that really fell apart there, whatever it is. I mean, even I'll share that when I stopped doing readings in 2019, I didn't have to anymore and I was pretty burned out on them. And so I stopped doing them. And then after about a year, really wanted to do them again, but just didn't quite know how to get back into them. And then in 2022, when things were just like much, much more lean in terms of courses, I went back to readings, which was some part like, yeah, I've been called to this. Another part like, we got, pay bills, like, got to take care of things. And it was the greatest gift, not only to reconnect with people like that in that intimate way, but also it got me back. Like, I don't know if I could have written this book without being in practice again as a reader. So, Soul Tarot has been formed and continues to be formed through a weaving of teaching regularly, being in conversation with my students, being in my own personal practice, being in relationship with nature and the world around me, navigating my own experiences through chronic illness, PTSD, chronic pain. It's formed out of some kind of weird personal web of understanding that seems to resonate with some people. But it definitely did not get created in one big bolt. It's not really how things get created for me, but it's been learned and honed over time.
I think that that is so just feels very like down to earth to me and very realistic, to be honest. Like most businesses that I know of, like unless someone has inherited generational wealth or wins the lottery, quite literally, or they're doing something that I would find completely unethical and just wouldn't do, they don't have a business overnight. They don't have success overnight. Nothing thrives immediately, right? And so that is true in the practices we cultivate and the businesses we build. And so I appreciated when you spoke earlier about like spending the first few years of this hustling and not to glorify the hustle. We're not saying everyone should or has to do that. And
Mhm,
also, every time I've seen someone birth a business that truly financially supported them, there was always a period of like friction and of labor, quite literally. And, I used to work with Jennifer Armbrust's sister, and she has written a whole business birthing handbook that is about this metaphor of like using birth as a metaphor to how businesses come into the world, just like how people come into the world. And
mhm,
of course, they're different, but I think that metaphorically, there are a lot of analogies here, and labor is one of the requirements of that. And that is not to glorify extraction or exploitation or the hustle, but it is to say that, like, the things that will sustain us require us to labor with them at some stage. And also, the whole business journey is not the moments of labor, right? The same way
mhm,
that you're not in labor the entire time you're raising your child. And so once you get through that stage, that's when it's really important to interrogate the hustle and be like, do I have to keep pushing? Do I have
mhm,
to keep forcing this? And especially in your business journey, what I'm really hearing is like things changed and they grew and there was a lot of success and that allowed you to build and do things in a certain way. And then I think what I'm piecing together from the things you've said is essentially like you had an online school and course business. It was doing very well until online courses stopped being as popular kind of after the pandemic. We saw that
mhm,
sort of start to decline in like 2023, 2024. I think 2025 was a really the year that folks who had built these big course businesses were like, okay, the online course model is not working anymore.
mhm.
And I loved that you admitted, or I appreciate that you admitted, like, at first you took it really personally. You're like, oh, it's me. Everyone's
Yeah.
done with me. My business is not working because of me, actually.
Mhm.
And then you realized because people shared that, oh no, the market is shifting. Like
Yeah.
sort of the landscape around you was changing. Like there was like a literal climate change in online
Yes,
business.
it was.
And that means that you do have to change and adapt, but it doesn't mean there's something like inherently wrong or broken in your work or your business. It's just that what I tell people is like, it doesn't mean you don't get to do what you love anymore. Just the shape of the offerings, the price points, the wrappings of it all does to some extent have to follow what people want to buy and how they want to be served in those
Right.
times. And so I'm so curious then, like, you mentioned that you started doing readings again when things were shifting, but like, what is the shape of your business right now? And how does the book play into that? Because book advances also make business finances really funny.
Mhm.
So what is, yeah, what's your work like in 2026?
So this has been an incredibly strange year. Financially, it's good. I'm slightly up from last year, which is great. Just slightly, but I'll take it. From the previous years where I was down, 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 which is great from previous years. So there's been for the last few years like a particular rhythm to our launch flow, I would say, and to the offerings flow. And this year is super different. So this was the first year that I offered. I have a membership. I revamped that. I do that. That's year long for however long you want to be in it. And that sort of by accident, honestly, has taken the place of my traditional course models because I think that the reality is that we're in a time where we're sort of like post course culture and to for certain industries certainly, but the truth is that for me, because I've been doing them for so many years, people loved my courses, but it was an enormous volume of material that while they could keep the material well beyond 8 weeks, it's very difficult to learn the tarot in 8 weeks. And some people, like everyone's a little different. So the membership serves and exists to be like a place where people can pop in, they can pop out, they can learn way more casually. I get to teach kind of what I want. It's a nice flow and it's cheaper than a course, which is really nice. So I'm always doing things for that. It was my first year doing the Soul Tarot training, which was lovely. And it was great to get to do that. I did a last round of one of my intuition courses, which I'm rebuilding that in a different way. But honestly, like it's been a little tricky because to be transparent with you, like I'm reaching a time where would it not be for the advance, the last part of my advance I'm going to get, I would be selling other things, but I'm right now talking about a book. And so I'm not in any way complaining about that, but it is like a little tricky. And it's like very humbling. It's I think most of the people I know who've written books have maybe more nest egg than I do, have more runway, or they have a partner who works, which I do not right now, or have they have something that allows the lights to stay on. And so it's been quite intense because I'm doing things and planned it very carefully so that I could make money like up until basically this baby comes out. And then it's going to come out. And within a couple weeks, like we will be opening the doors to different things because, you know, not like in a like wild, fast paced way, but just the summer flow will start, and it will be a lot lighter this year, but super different than usual. But that's okay. It's all right. We're making space for a big birth.
Yeah, I appreciate once again just your like honesty about this because I think that I mean, I know from the outside because I'm projecting this onto your book launch. I'm like, this is amazing. Nobody gets book tours like this. Nobody gets decks and books at the same time. I love it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at that. And if you've never done a book launch, be like, wow, this person is having the utmost success. They must be rich now, must just be working. And once you talk to people who put out books in this way, you're like, yes,
Yeah.
I revel in the riches of the deck and the book
Yeah.
and that. But
Yeah.
the money already happened, or a bunch of it did, to help me write the book. I
That's
have to
right.
pause my business to promote the book, which means there's now
Yeah.
this deficit that has to either be bridged by like the rest of the advance, if that's coming, which it doesn't for everyone,
Mhm.
or like a rush to try to get royalties to come in. But so few books actually earn out
Oh,
advances
yeah.
and make royalties. And so the economics of it all is very challenging. And I appreciate when authors are honest about it, just to be like, any book release is a complicated, nuanced thing in this way.
And I had to, by the way, just to add to that, I had to hire my own PR person, which was a
Uh,
piece of advice that was given to me by Ruby. And I remember her telling me this like 10 years ago because Ruby has written many, many books and started writing books like when I was coming up, basically, and like was just like wide-eyed. And she was like, if you ever have the opportunity to write a book, you must budget money for a PR person. And I love the publicity team that came with my publishing house. Like, obviously, they were absolutely lovely, but it's like I don't blame them. They're understaffed, they're wildly oversaturated and overworked. And I got the book tour I wanted because I paid for it, which is also a lot of money. And the book publicist that I hired is much more of a book tour person. They are a media person, which maybe was a mistake, but I figured like I could throw all the money in the world at media and nobody might come to me, right? But if I am in the arena with like the people who really love this work, who like got me to the point where like this book was even possible, like I'd prefer that. I've just never been like a major press person. Like I'm a word of mouth person so far in my career. And I have like some feelings about that, but mostly it's gratitude. Like mostly it's gratitude. So yes, I just for full transparency's sake, the book tour that I got, I don't think that happens without paying for an extra publicist, which I did and had to do. So just want to put that out there for anybody who might need to hear it.
Thank you for that
You're welcome.
transparency and clarity. I love
Yeah.
this image, though. It's like you didn't hire a publicist to try to get you on like Good Morning America. Instead, I'm just thinking of that metaphor you used before of like your business at a certain point and like you have set the table and people are coming to the table and now you're just
Yeah.
sort of like carrying your table around the country and inviting
Mhm.
people in different spaces to join you
Yeah.
at it, which is really,
Mhm.
really beautiful. But heard that you're getting the book launch of your dreams because you're paying for the pieces that you
Mhm.
really wanted to happen.
That's correct. And I'm happy to be able to do that. Listen, it's a huge fucking privilege. I'm not complaining about it.
Well, we're recording this right as you're about to head off on that book tour. You leave in 2
Mhm.
days.
I do.
You are at the threshold of the book coming into the world, and this episode will release right after the book has come into the world. And so I just wanted to ask, are there any tarot cards that are really carrying you through this threshold? Are there archetypes that you're holding close right now as you enjoy this moment?
Yes. So I've been talking kind of by accident about the nature of big birthing and creation seasons. Something that I think really defines a huge creative season, especially when we're comparing it to birth. And honestly, a book launch is pretty close. It's not the same thing, but it is pretty close. And I would say that one factor of it is that it is too fast. It's a little too much. Like the correct thing would be to stop and slow down, but you can't really. And so the two cards that are doing everything for me in this space right now are Knight of Swords and Nine of Wands. I'm barely even going to my deck because it doesn't matter because those two cards are all I have. So Nine of Wands really helps me. I think of it knowing everybody has completely different viewpoints on these two cards and the tarot in general. For me, Nine of Wands is always an indication that we're a caribou migrating. We are a person in labor. We are running a marathon. We are in a process that is long. We're not going to get home for a long time. So we have to figure out ways to rest as we can, where we can, in between contractions. And it's a very, very different cadence of refueling and recharging than what we want and what might be normal for us. And for me, those things are really important. And the way that they've sort of come about is I'm in bed when my child's in bed. My child goes to bed at 6:30. I am in bed at 6:30. And like the TV is on and I'm doing my lotions and my phone is off and like that's it. And I'm actually weirdly getting up earlier because I need a little bit more time before my day gets started. So it's there's a lot of self-talk. Like, I have days where I'm like, "I just can't do anything today, but I must." So it's just continually remembering this is a different cadence. We're lucky to be here and it's really hard, and like flow with that. Knight of Swords is also a really important one for me. For me, Knight of Swords can be fast, but more than anything, it's about like you're capable of going further than you think you are. You have more capacity than you might believe you do. You can do this, but the trick to it is you cannot think about it. You can't dread it. You can't mentally project. You have to go with what's here. And that is a moment to moment thing for me because, again, I'm chronically ill. I have like issues with balance and stability, and going away for 6 days in 3 cities. I need a pretty high degree of rest. I'm on very early flights. Again, none of this is a complaint, but I am scared. I'm scared. And like Knight of Swords is it's helping me with all of these things, with gigantic weeks, gigantic days, gigantic swaths of time to be like, you're not there. You can't be there. You're capable of a lot more than you think you are. You got to be here. And when you're there, you'll figure it out. And thinking about all the other times where I've figured it out and just being like, what's the worst that can happen? You can't do it? Okay. You can't do it. Like, whatever. Like, just not going down because I don't have the energy to waste on being afraid or worried or in the unknown of it all. So those two cards are really holding me up. And yeah, and I feel like the Empress is back there too as an invitation for me to just really try to enjoy this. You know, I'm never going to have another book launch like this. I might not write another book and it won't be like this. It's really big. It's amazing. And what a fucking privilege and an honor it is to be in this position. So, like, I'm also trying to, like, honestly, it's been a really helpful practice to not complain and just be like, like, you're so lucky to be tired. It's great. Like, you're allowed to have your feelings, but also, like, look what you're doing right now. It's incredible. So that's been helpful too.
Oh, I love all of this. As you were sharing about these cards, I was finding them in the Soul Tarot deck and feeling
Oh,
so, I don't know if pleased is the right word, but to describe for listeners, like to see the Nine of Wands as the resting caribou, to see
oh,
the wands or the logs in this card like as holding up the caribou instead of, like so strapped on and bearing down in some traditional imagery. I also love that the Knight of Swords is like a diving hawk, I think, falcon,
you had the peregrine falcon.
beautiful
Yeah,
peregrine falcon. And, once the falcon dives, they just have to surrender to that
I
moment.
know.
They're in the trajectory.
Hmm.
And also the Empress with these beautiful pomegranate and flowers and dripping honeycomb. And as you said, like that being the backdrop, like the riches and abundance being the backdrop of this experience, but then recognizing that what you actually need to make it through all of that day to day are these supports. And, you know, something else that was just coming through for me as you were sharing is like, it'd be so different to be approaching this time as like the 10 of Swords.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could be like, "Wow, I'm gonna be so tired, so overrun. I just have to make it to the end." And yeah, maybe at the end you'll feel that way, who knows? But I love these tarot cards and archetypes you've selected because they're not that, and they don't predetermine that that's gonna be how you feel, and I completely understand also what you're describing. My spouse, JJ, refers to it as being, like, pre-tired, like, when you're so stressed about what's to come that you're
Yes.
exhausted.
It's perfectly put.
And we try not to get pre-tired for the hard things in our household, but I love the Knight of Swords and the Knight of Wands and the Empress as ways of making it through all of that. So thank you for sharing. I also loved that tiny bit you said at the beginning, which was like, in this moment, I'm not going to the deck to pull cards. I just know that these are the cards I have
Yeah.
selected. And I think that's also a really lovely piece of wisdom for folks to think about in moments like this where there just may be a lot going on. Sometimes we actually don't need the additional input or, on a really hard day, you don't necessarily need to pull and then be like, oh, it's already hard and the Three of Swords is here. Now what? Like maybe you do need that, but also maybe you just
Yeah.
need to pick the actual support you think you need and ride that out for the hard
That's
day.
right. That's right.
All right, Lindsay. Well, thank you so much for this time. I could talk to you truly for so many hours. I definitely wanted to hear like how you and Chelsea made the deck together. I wanted to hear more
Oh,
about your school. So we'll have to do, I think, if you're open to it, a part 2 on the
oh
other
God.
side.
Kidding me? Yes, of course. I would die. We had such
Great.
a lovely experience making the deck. There's so much to say about it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, maybe we can have you both on. That would also be very lovely. Is there anything else that you wanted to say to Off the Grid listeners for now as we wrap up?
I just want to say I'm so grateful to be here with all of you, but I also just really want to say something to you, which is to not only thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me, but for being, I mean, truly an anchor for everyone that owns a small business that I know and have ever known. Like Andrea Reeves says, like all roads lead back to Amelia Ruby. And it's true. Like that is the tie that binds. Like this podcast is so important to me. It's so important to so many. Like your work is life-saving for so many of us. Like just thank you so much. And I'm so happy to have been here today. Really.
Mhm. I received that and I'm so grateful. And yeah, you know what? Just like cheers to all the podcasts that save our lives. I know yours is one.
For
Tara
real.
Brock, you're out there. You have one. Kristen Tippett, non being, absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
And I am honored that anyone out there counts Off the Grid among that list.
It's true.
And it's a joy and a pleasure to be here with you and all the listeners and everyone who tunes in and to build this web of our businesses that I really deeply believe do change the world and do shift the economics of this often fucked up system we inhabit. So thank you so much again, Lindsay, for joining me. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. You should absolutely, I unequivocally, every person hearing this podcast should go get a copy of Tarot for the Wild Soul. Get your hands on the Soul Tarot deck. It's gorgeous. You're going to want it. You're going to learn so much. Whether you are a brand new beginner or you have a decades-long practice, I can confidently say there's a lot here for you. So head to the link in the show notes for all of that. And I think that's it for now. So until next time, we will see you off the grid.
I kinda hate social media, feeds on my brain like a bacteria. If you read my Wikipedia, it'll say I kinda hate social media. Post a picture of myself, sacrifice my mental health, use your product time to sell. I would rather go to hell. Do you like this? Leave a comment. Can you share this? Will you wear this? Do you like this? Leave a comment. Can you share this? Will you wear this? Okay.
That was an abridged version of Social Media by Surfer Boy and Rectangle. To hear the entire song, find Surfer Boy on Spotify or head to the link in the show notes. Thanks so much to them for sharing the song with us, as well as to Melissa Caitlin Carter, who sings our theme song that you hear at the start of every show. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and if you enjoyed this episode, I hope you will download the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. Until next time, I will see you off the grid.